We are back and ready to go here with our first match of the day, and it is going to be Jarla versus Viper. Two very, very well-known players, of course, within the European region. But honestly, Sol, Jarla, I feel even though when we try, we do not talk about him enough, even though I know we both know we should and we try to, but his results, frankly, incredible. We're talking about Blaze recently, we spoke about Hunt Race in the past, even the French in general as a powerhouse, but Jarla on his own, more or less, it has probably just the best results in GM.
Yeah, synergy as always, Raven, because it's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Our producer, Abar, who the multi-talented man that he is, proving that he could come along and take any of our jobs at any moment. I think put out a tweet last night that phrased it perfectly. So I'm essentially going to crib him. And he just said, that's 5 out of 5 qualifications for top 8 now. He has the highest overall win rate in terms of match score in the entire European region, which is the most difficult reason. So that, low-key, just quietly, just makes him the best player in the world based on statistics. He is playing at the highest level you possibly can right now, and he has the best possible record at that level. So how can you really make too much of a compelling argument against him? He's an incredible player. Consistency is the #1 thing that you should look at over a period of time when you're really trying to assess, who has the business as a Hearthstone player. Jarla is just Mr. Consistency here. If he can steal that title away from Bloodyface in the Americas region.
Exactly, and as we're going to be getting into our game #1 already, the player's not messing around. I like it. Viper on the top on that Rogue and Jarla on this Mage. And I just want to point out a final word is that we talk a lot about players we would like to see at Worlds, and there's many reasons, whether they're an exciting deck builder, they're just a great character to have there, and so on. Obviously has to be good at Hearthstone, but honestly, I just want to see Jarla at Worlds because he's, like you said, he's just playing the best. And that's someone I want to see on the finals, the world stage, just to see how far he can truly go. And maybe, or not even maybe, I have no doubts he has the ability to take it on.
Yeah, you can trace it all the way back, really, to HGG, which was perhaps his big exposure to a lot of people as part of the team alongside Stan Sifka. And I say alongside Stan Sifka in that tone of voice because it really did tilt me after a point, how much credit Stan Sifka was given, as if he was showing up on his own and soloing everyone.
Right.
He was leading the team, and every play had to go through Stan, and he had to approve everything. And I was just sort of you guys have heard of this guy, right? Jarla is like top 5 legend on ladder every single day of his life and has been for years. He's one of the best players in the world, and we're giving Stan Sifka way too much credit and Jarla not enough. And I think from that point, he absolutely hasn't let go of that reputation in my eyes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people now hit the point where it's more who's Sifka and we all know Jarla at this point in life, so maybe that's just fine. Here we go. Viper, though, on this Rogue going up against the, again, I will call it Tempo Mage. We definitely need to come up with a better name for this deck. But this is a interesting matchup as well, Saul, because I'm not really sure what to make of these 18,000 different slight styles of Rogue that we have right now in the meta, and as is typical Viper's case, he is bringing something a little bit different as well, with the double steel dancers in this list.
A cruel fate awaits you in the ashes.
Indeed, but this is pretty much one of the best curves that you can draw. It's Stealth Minion that sticks into Greyheart Sage, and then follows that up with the old stylish Triple S, the Self-Sharpening Sword, right on curve after that. Which, unless there is Ooze in your opponent's deck, is going to represent an enormous amount of damage over the course of the game. And then, honestly, just double Steel Dancer after that is a hotly contested card, and I think one of the things you really have to highlight, as Raven was talking about, slightly different builds of the deck, a lot of people build this Rogue by sacrificing board-based cards like Steel Dancer for more face-based cards like Sinister Strike, South Sea Deckhands, just extra straight-up damage to face. But this is definitely a version of the deck that plays for tempo and board presence a little bit more than you might expect because of those Steel Dancers being able to stick to the board and actually generate a lot of stats for 4 mana.
Yeah, and one thing I've been enjoying about watching a lot of Rogues play, the past week or so when these decks are being developed is how, when, and why you play Self-Sharpening Sword, because that card, it starts as only 1 attack, and then gains attack every time it swings, right? So, is the curve actually Viper going Sword on 3 into Steel Dancer on 4? Or do you think we're much more likely to see the support from the Deadly Poison other tools before the Steel Dancer comes down for a much bigger payoff?
Yeah, I think ideally, like, if he was just playing Solitaire here, then he... Ooh, okay, cutting class has made this even more interesting. But if he was just playing Solitaire here, yeah, he'd play Sword, then he'd follow that up with Deadly Poison and Volpira, and then he'd start playing Steel Dancers for massive minions after that. The problem comes because your opponent does actually get to play minions as well, and that can be problematic. So he might just need his own minions from Steel Dancer a turn or two quicker than you might expect, just be able to contest board on the side of the Mage. But honestly, in this matchup, if Mage builds a board of minions, and you start playing minions into that as your response, that's what they want you to do. That's where the name Tempo Mage actually becomes real and not the bit of a misnomer that it is. Because if you just leave their minions in play and just try and respond with minions of your own, they will tempo past those minions faster than you can blink an eye. So honestly, I think if Mage starts getting bored against you in this matchup, you would much rather be running double Sinister Strike, double South Sea Deckhand, double Eviscerate, and just be able to slam every point of damage into their face and race them.
Yeah, it's just activating a lot of the cards, and I guess the choice as well for Viper is, do you want stuff or do you want good minions, right?
Yeah.
Because that's normally what you get. Steel Dancer on curve with this is going to be, you get something on board as opposed to something that powerful. Right now for Jarla, though, I've seen players in this position press that evocation, so it was just a point. Jarla definitely takes his time when he's playing the game. He is probably, along with Bunny Hop, one of the slower players. But there was a moment there where I was like, if he needs to press evocation, he might need to look at it pretty quickly. But with this hand, I think there is plenty more opportunity going forward for him to still have a strong evocation turn.
There was, yeah. There was, what, like a fraction of a percentage chance he could have played Mana Giant that turn if he just ripped the evocation. But yeah, I think with second Sorcerers in hand, there's no great need to panic. He'll have plenty of time to get full value and have his big tempo swing with the Mana Giant.
All the orders come in. That still killed the minion regardless of it, so that's fine. Most importantly, Viper is just getting that free cutting class, which means the card draw engine is there, and now double secret passage for Viper to kind of re-roll his hand any given turn. Seems like he is in a lot of control here, and it may have to be Jarla going for this evocation to actually just break this game.
It might well do, yeah. Strictly correct ordering from Viper on the previous turn,
exactly, yeah.
You can't put 4 damage into a 2 health minion. That just feels bad. You just do it the other way around, so you feel better about yourself. It's just absolutely the right way to do it.
And most importantly, it looks flashier because you play all the cards together, and you don't like play a card, attack, play a card, so on.
Yeah.
That was a relatively cheap evocation. There is the Frostbolt there as well, I think, on the far left, which means he can lock out a weapon swing for very, very cheap.
Against me.
The explosion going to just disintegrate this board. The Frostbolt follow-up. It wasn't the craziest pop-off evocation I've ever seen, but with this turn and this mana, I think Jarla's going to be pretty happy with that one.
Yeah, I mean, like, that looked pretty nutty to me. Like, I don't know how good an evocation you can relatively expect, but give me a Frostbolt and 2 other playables in this matchup, and I'll be happy. Like I was saying, this matchup does generally come down to a race. Like, Rogue can't really afford to just play for board over and over again because that's kind of what the Mage wants them to do. So therefore, they do have to race a lot of the time. And Frostbolt is just the best race card in this matchup. Like, you just deny so much damage, so much removal potential, and the fact that he was doing it with double spell damage in play as well, it was just so much damage straight back the other way, that you see Viper just immediately having to reach into his passage here to dig something out and find an answer to the board state.
Not in the first game, Sol, please. At least give me some time to just...
What?
You know what? I will say though, and I will agree about the Frostbolt. It's not just stall; it's acceleration because of the damage you mentioned as well. The devolving missiles here could get rid of the taunt, but not really going to be too much of a payoff. I do wonder if Jarla's looking at just Mana Giant into one Thief. That'll leave him 3 mana to play around with.
Yep.
Seems pretty good, because I just don't feel like this is worth the devolving missiles, especially when your opponent plays Steel Dancer, and that weapon is starting to stack up.
Yeah, and I mean, just on the surface, you're devolving a 4-mana 3/3, right? Like, there's a good chance you can even just increase the power on board. So I do like this, because even if you don't get a playable here, which debatable, you still have mana, even if you have to bail out for devolving missiles ping at the end of the turn, right? Which is what he ends up doing. So I think this ordering is just strictly correct. To be perfectly honest, ooh, ugly.
Hey, he didn't want to get a better drop, like you mentioned, Sal, so he just didn't hit the crosshair with the devolving missiles, and it's no problem. I do like the Apexis Blast pickup, though, because that is just, at least for Jarla, playing to be the finishing tool, right? To just use the Apexis Blast plus a hero power to go face, and hopefully have pushed some extra damage through with this giant. But Viper now has options. He still has this weapon that's going to be stacking up some more damage. Most importantly, he has Sap. And I do wonder if just Sap into Steel Dancer post swing is just going to be good enough here. He can clear the board and create quite the board himself.
Yeah, I think the argument is likely that versus Secret Passage again.
Are you going to get a better turn?
That is the question, right? And my initial instinct is no. But, Viper also has to play around a range of things that Jarla discovered here. Like, this isn't a truly randomly generated spell. So Viper might be thinking, like, emergency-wise, is there any way I could realistically set up, like, a 2-turn lethal, so I'm not just going to get, like, ping, fireball, pinged down or something like that over the near future? So I think it's worth stopping and thinking about in the spot, but yeah, I totally agree. Sap and Steel Dancer certainly looks like the play.
And that is a good summon, because the spell burst on that minion means that if Viper chooses to play a spell and the 3/5 isn't dealt with, then that giant could just be insta-killed. It effectively acts like a spell burst deadly shot. Pretty much with that effect. Sorry about just coming back to us. I know you don't want to look at us that much, guys. I apologize. But we do just see, I think it might have been a disconnect, so we should be able to just reconnect in there and continue with the game. But that was looking very good for Viper, and I think it just shows that at least these decks, not less the Priest, less the Warrior, but I feel like almost everything else, the matchups are very, very close, and the games can flip so quickly. I think we're going to expect to see a lot more games this close throughout this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's very possible that that's the case. Jarla is in a pretty rough spot right now. I do still have connection on my personal spectator right now, which I'm a little bit concerned about, because Jarla is actually roping out, which if he was disconnected, I believe we should have paused. But no, Jarla is actually just roping out. He is still connected to the game. He has just played his turn, decided to remove the Spellburst minion, as Raven was talking about, redevelop the Mana Giant. So the game is still ongoing, but Jarla is, as Raven was saying, in a pretty rough spot. But I do like your point that the matchups do feel close right now. I'm not necessarily sure whether that'll be the case long term, or whether it's just because fresh metagame matchups tend to feel a bit closer, because it might take a week or two for, like, the very top players to find the ways to break certain matchups consistently in their favor, and then for that information to trickle down through the community, so that the vast majority of players are playing them at that level. So it might change over time, but as it is right now, it does certainly seem like there's a lot of 50 to 52% matchups in either direction.
And even just the games themselves, they just feel like they can swing so hard. So you look at the rogue deck, the mage deck, and then you see like Soul Demon Hunter, which can do high damage outputs and high outputs of healing, or can whiff sometimes. You do see these games end very quickly. And while Sol's getting to watch the match, unfortunately, I'm stupid, so I'm not. We're just going to judge Sottle's radio commentary along with facial expressions to see what's going on. But fill us in, because I don't need to talk here.
So the turn passed back to Viper. The Spellburst minion had got a Apexis Blast. There was a giant on board. Viper ripped his second secret passage and got an absolutely nutty pull because he got 0 mana cutting class off his secret passage, which was then able to refill the board. So he actually managed to tempo that whole turn through a mana giant on the other side of the board and has ended the turn almost threatening lethal with an empty board on the other side. So that is a pretty insane swing turn for Viper, who, because Jarla had to shoot that Apexis Blast at a minion, is now not really threatening lethal himself anymore. So Viper has got so much time and so much damage built up over the next turn or two that now Jarla's finding himself in trouble.
Yeah, it's super close as well.
It's hard. It's not cut out for radio, Hearthstone. I don't know if you've noticed this. It's not a great radio broadcast.
So what I need to do is get a whiteboard and draw the board state and just keep editing it as you're talking. That's clearly what we should do going forward. I'll buy a whiteboard for next week. But what's incredible is the game is still going on. Like, honestly, yeah, it completely sucks that we don't have it for you guys, and we do apologize. We're working on it. Just a tech issue on our end. But I don't know how this game's continuing based off when we left. the game looked like it was over one way or the other, and it's still going on because I can hear it.
If my camera wasn't so securely mounted in place, I could literally just pick it up and point it at my other monitor over
just
here.
Pick your monitor up and spin it.
Just hold it in front of my face. Yeah,
and then I'll cast. It'll be perfect. So I did hit the rope. So what's going on? Because how is the game still continuing, Sol? Because I just don't know.
So I described Viper's turn, right? He cleared, he pushed damage. He's threatening 12 damage, Jarla at 19 this turn. Jarla's draw off the top was second Mana Cyclone, which the one card he had in his hand at that point was the other Mana Cyclone. So Jarla essentially roped that turn out and then pinged face and passed, because that's all he was able to do in that situation, right? And now with a better idea of the situation, you can kind of see why that's right? Like, Jarla needs these Mana Cyclones to potentially generate himself like a fireball out on the coming turns or whatever, but like, it's a shame you guys did miss a very crucial turn, which was Viper's second secret passage, where he was able to clear the 8/8 and draw a bunch of cards from cutting class to be able to just straight up threaten lethal now. And now you see the forbidden Steel Dancer, the cursed Steel Dancer, the actual 10-drop coming off this minion. Rarely seen. Incredible stuff. Viper actually hitting the Nazari here, which is about as unthreatening as a 10-drop could be, but still looking like it's going to be more than good enough in this situation.
You say that, but I did have to check Viper's list to make sure he wasn't running Shadow Step, because that would have just ended the game. So, no Shadow Steps available there. Victory is yours. We came in just for the end, and congratulations to Viper going 1-0 with this rogue. Again, huge apologies from us. Trust me, I didn't want to not get to watch the end of that game either, but hopefully we'll have fixed the tech issues now. So sorry about that one. But as a reminder, this is last hero standing, which means Viper's rogue hasn't gone. It's the Mage of Jarla that is off the board now and off the table as a choice. Viper is going to be playing that rogue again. And this is where it really gets into the nitty-gritty, I suppose, of how to work out this format and how to play it, as the players do get to lock in whatever decks they've got left to try and go for those counter picks. But I believe we are going to go to a quick break while we just make sure those tech issues are sorted and also make sure the players are ready for their game number 2. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back to continue our first match. Or not, and we can keep talking. There's always option 2. So Sol, how's it going?
It's going great. I mean, you mentioned you didn't want to miss the game. I certainly didn't. I certainly didn't want the pressure of having to radio cast that entire game. So either way, it's interesting to see that swing turn. From my perspective, it's a shame you guys couldn't. But as you mentioned, it's a very big deal because, as Raven was talking about, last hero standing, that means that the rogue is left up, and it's a potential deck that now could be able to push through the remainder of Jarla's lineup, because he's got a couple of kind of slowish, mid-rangey decks that, if rogue can pile up the right amount of pressure, might be able to take out the series.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I'm just double-checking everything here for the deck list, but with Jarla's Warrior gone, it is a little bit scary because he either has Highlander, Priest, or Druid to play. And as you mentioned, Druid combined, well, there's no KT in this list, but Druid being just I don't want to say slow, but is susceptible for some early game plays and maybe minion development and some early game damage. And then because the priest, which honestly I feel just the 2 of Galakron priest feels strong enough to deal with many different aggressive types of lists, because this is Highlander priest, there's more chance of missing those cards. Like, it feels crazy that people want to play Cabal Acolyte, for example, in just as one of and not have 2 to defend against the aggro. But it looks like we are going to go to a quick break now. We can carry on our conversation once we are done, but we'll be back as quick as we can to get ready for our game number 2. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, Doa here with Surrender, easily one of the most friendly players in all of Hearthstone. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good, thank you.
You and I both know when you play Hearthstone sometimes, it's not all a bed of roses. We experience things in the game that may anger us, and you know, even for a player like you, it's okay to kind of show some of that emotion sometimes. So I think what we're going to do today is go through some scenarios and kind of explore some of those emotions and maybe connect with them a little bit deeper. Does that sound good?
It sounds great.
I hope so. You've got the game won, no problem. Huge board, but your opponent top decks Zephyrus, plays Twisting Nether, your board is gone, and the only card left in your hand is a Mortal Coil. You lose. So how do you feel about that?
It's okay because I can also always top deck Zephyrus, so it's fair.
Doesn't that make you want to maybe, I don't know, rip this piece of paper in half? You know, just give it a good tear. Let it out.
I'm good. Thank you.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure it's okay.
Okay. I guess we'll try a different scenario. You're in a game and you're winning by a lot. Like you took control early and you're crushing this guy. But he starts letting it go down to the rope on his turn. Every single time. Every turn. And so what should have been a 5-minute game is now like a 20-minute game. Doesn't that make you a little bit frustrated that this person's wasting your time?
No, it's fine because it means I have more time to think myself, so it's kind of fine.
Are you sure it doesn't make you want to just, I don't know, punch this punching bag? Really let it have it. Let that anger out, you know?
No.
Give it a good bop, you know, let your anger out, you know, let it have it.
I don't want to. I'm fine. Thank you.
All right, well, one last scenario then. So here's the situation. You're playing on stream and you miss lethal. Not that big of a deal, right? I mean, you were paying attention to chat, it's understandable. But the problem is, the T1 coach was right behind you the whole time. He fires you on the spot. Then after that, your tears fall down and short out the keyboard, and it destroys your computer. Your computer explodes. And as it explodes, it sends a surge of corrupted data into the internet and deletes all the money in your bank account. That's suspicious. The police come looking for you. Now you're on the run. You find yourself 3 weeks later on Christmas Day in a cold, dark cave, alone. And that's when the bear attacks. So tell me, how does that make you feel? That's gotta be a little bit frustrating.
I like bears. At least I have bears now. It's okay.
Most people would be a bit upset. Doesn't it make you maybe want to, I don't know, break this board, this martial arts board, just hit it, just snap it in half with all of your rage?
I don't want to punch that. It's okay.
All right, well, I guess you're just untiltable, and I respect that. That's cool. You know, you and I go way back. Let's just reminisce about old times. OGN Hearthstone Season 3, you made it to the finals of that, didn't you?
I did make the finals, but I lost. Oh!
We are back. Sorry about that slight delay. We just had to find out what happened, and what happened was multiple people who actually run the show and make the show happen all lost internet. So that normally kicks things over a little bit, but we've got everything back on track again. We do apologize, but we are ready to get into this next game, and hopefully we won't have any more issues going forward. It is Viper versus Jarla, and Viper taking the win with his rogue means he's on it once again, and Jarla loses his mage as he took the loss, which means he has druid or priest to pick from. This is last hero standing, different from last week. But what you fancying? We were sort of getting into it, but then we had to step away. But what you fancying of Jarla's chances here? Druid priest with picks versus the rest of Viper's lineup.
Yeah, certainly tough to say. I mean, the druid can certainly get beaten up by a strong rogue draw. The priest is probably more resilient. We saw in the APAC matches how badly rogue can get tortured by priest if they do hit the weapon removal that can really kind of neuter the entire deck. But just the way the counter cues can go back and forth here, Jarla might have to save his priest. And yeah, it looks like he's going to lead out the druid here, which I think is a slightly worse matchup to be getting on with initially. But I think over the course of the series, the way Last Hero Standing kind of pans out and the way you can kind of roadmap out a series based on the result of the first match, I think going with the druid here and potentially getting a win with the druid, which is still very doable, does put him in a stronger position in the series overall.
Right, Viper here. Kicking off with the Spy Mistress on 1 is always a fantastic start to any stealth rogue game, but the weapon is still missing, at least for now. Not a huge problem on turn 2. As I'm sure, Viper would like to play other things, but still, just not having it quite yet is fine. But he will need to get hold of one very, very soon. Otherwise, we saw what we saw a little bit of in the Asia-Pacific Grandmasters today, was that sometimes the rogue had to just build a weapon from the dagger, which is something you never want to do in any matchup.
You don't, but it is sometimes nice to at least have that fallback. In a lot of other classes, it's potentially just lights out if you're playing a hyper weapon synergy deck and you just don't have the weapon. You look at Bomb Warrior, for example, they draw the weapons more often than not because there's 3 of them in the deck most of the time, and there's the Corsair cache to find them. But if they don't, and then suddenly they've got like the green Krastanov hand, they really have like nothing to be getting on with. Or at least the rogue does have a consolation prize, which is something that Viper's trying to keep available to himself now, although that is a huge pickup off the top. Should now allow him to find a slightly nicer way to tie this hand together.
Well, not bad. It doesn't look good on surface. Oh, another Steel Dancer without a weapon. But the passage means Viper can sort of re-roll his hand next turn, try and go for a weapon, and go from there. But ooh, indeed, as there is a Lightning Bloom pickup here for Jarla, which does unlock a few choices of turns. But is he going to go for it, Soto?
He's leading Worthy Expedition, and he doesn't find anything too exciting to do with it. That does seem to suggest that he would, because obviously if he starts ramping with the blooms and the innovates, the discount from his nature studies would have been lost, so it was smart to get the Worthy Expedition out of the way first. It does look like Jarla is resetting, and this is something that I do like to see. Like, even if you are a slow player, getting key decisions out of the way early and then stopping and resetting again, this is generally a way to avoid roping out and making game-losing mistakes at the end of the rope if you do just get some decisions out of the way in the middle of your turn and then reassess.
Yeah, and if there's someone who utilizes a lot of time, it is Jarla. I do think now if you want to go off, he should have by now, right?
Yeah.
Because you still have to get the minions to hit the balls with the animation of Guardian Animals, then go for an attack and so on, so... Yeah, just gonna take it slow, keep hold of this bloom. And they said broom then, because I feel like we spoke about it so much last week. Every word is just Dr. Broom. But yeah, he's going to be taking it a little bit slower. Viper now has a second secret passage, but I do think he has to go for it, right? Does Viper need to get a weapon ASAP right now?
I would imagine so, yeah. Five shots for the self-sharpening might just be worthwhile right now, the way this hand looks. It's either that or you play the Elton John, right? No one wants a tiny dancer.
That tickled me more than I think it should have, honestly. I just wasn't expecting it. He did get the self-sharpening sword, though, so that is priority number one going for Viper. I imagine this is going to be a self-sharpening sword, and then go straight into the Steel Dancer next turn.
You're right. Do you need a minute?
It's ruined me. I don't even know why. It just got me.
You just have to accept that I'm just really witty, Raven. That's the
no,
only solution.
I don't think it's that good. It was just it just threw me off. That's
it's really
what I mean.
Not that good,
there's no actual explanation as to why it tickled me so much.
It's really not that good. I agree.
But now, Viper is only running those self-sharpening swords, so I think, on ladder you see some of the scimitar, for example, as extra weapons in certain builds, but it is only that one, so having that equipped now and you can start building it up with the help of next turn Deadly Poison, Swing, and then Steel Dancer, means that suddenly Jarla is going to have a board state he has to answer, but the question is, Sol, will Guardian Animals answer that board state often enough?
I think it will, yeah, and I think this wild growth actually now gives Jarla a lot of options. We didn't really have time to fully dive into the curves and the reasons why and why not on the previous turn for Jarla, but it can be a problem if you just fire out the earliest possible Guardian Animals with a bunch of overload in this matchup, and then get hit with the sap, get hit with the tempo plays, in that turn and still kind of behind on board from Jarla's perspective, and then you're just Giga overloaded on the following turn. Right. That's a game-losing proposition, right? Because that's suddenly 10, 12, 14 damage coming through over the course of a couple of turns. So now, following up on that train of logic, Jarla finds himself in a position where he can actually just naturally curve out Guardian Animals and not suffer any overload at all, and just be able to keep playing heavy hitter after heavy hitter from this point forward, which I think is a pretty attractive proposition, to be perfectly honest.
There are some really big 5-drops, though. There are some really small ones. And Viper just got a medium one. I guess it's a small one, actually. Would you say that's a small 5-drop? Probably, right?
It is small. Median 5-drop is 4-5, so the one that you're expecting to hit most often.
Oof. And the wince there from Viper as he sees double Twilight Runner, which means a ton of card draw for Viper if he wants it. But honestly, is there a world in which he can leave this much damage on board knowing he can't really stop the weapon anyway?
No, I don't like it. I think you just got to clear it all out. Second animal's only one Lake Thresher remaining in the deck now, though, which he can play with Rush for 6 out of his hand without having to play Guardian Animals, thanks to the benefit of the Broom.
This is the huge setup now. Viper goes again with the second Steel Dancer to get an 8 drop. Dramatic pause.
Oh!
Okay, that's good. And then now he has Sap, Eviscerate, or if he needs something crazier, he does have Secret Passage. I don't know if Jarla can do enough in one turn of Hearthstone to stop
Raven, you are forgetting about our Lord and Savior Dr. Broom, okay? Never question how much you can do in one turn. When you have Mount Seller, 3 mana's worth of ramp, a bunch of spells to summon minions, and then enough to drop a Broom at the end of your turn. This board's getting cleared.
Crystal Power, huge.
Dread Raven Synergy Pog! It's gone. The board's gone.
Sands of time run low.
There is still options for Viper though, right? He can go swing. Oh, it will cost him mana. He needs to draw something low because he could go Eviscerate and then if he can activate Eviscerate and then Secret Passage for the other Eviscerate.
Yeah.
Does get him there. That's what I was meaning. Like, don't get me wrong. This is a fantastic turn and you are completely right. The Broom normally solves all problems, but there are options here and Jarla has already used a Crystal Power and most importantly, he is overloaded so he cannot overflow next turn. So with that knowledge solved, do you think Viper doesn't have to go crazy here and he can just swing, re-equip a weapon, for example, or maybe just don't re-equip the weapon, just play the Jandis and just set up for the follow-up next turn if he knows his opponent can't heal. And the worst he can do, or the best he can do versus Viper, is play a taunt in which he has Sap for.
It's certainly a proposition. You could go, yeah, you could just go like Jandis of this turn, right? And then try and use Sap and Secret Passage to fish for lethal on the following turn. You are absolutely right. Viper decides he just wants to go right now, and I think this is just an idea. He wants big board this turn so that he can actually consolidate his presence, and that's what he's going to end up with. Cutting class for 0, draws Dread Corsair.
Also,
all
the
0
Doctor is in. He gets another swing of the weapon.
This is monstrous. It's very rare that a Secret Passage is so good that you just let Edwin go straight back into the deck, but this is absolutely that situation.
And the Eviscerate as well.
Yep.
Crazy, but that Dr. Krasinov giving the durability on the weapon, which means Viper has a 10-1 weapon now. He's still held on to the Sap if there's any emergency taunt coming out of Jarla, but with only 6 mana, it is going to pretty much have to just be a 5-drop of choice and taunt. And that is not going to be enough looking at this.
Nope. Double taunt does look pretty attractive from Jarla's position, but the board already contests one of the taunts. The Sap is going to contest the other. Even if the board wasn't there to contest the Messenger Raven, the Eviscerate could have ended up taking care of it. And that is going to be a fast as lightning by Viper versus Jarla standards. 2-0 for Viper, who's setting himself up for a sweep on that Rogue. And I did mention this was a risk from Jarla's side. I do think he queued a potentially weaker matchup for himself, although I don't know whether double Mount Seller Broom Druid maybe changes the matchup enough in Jarla's favor that he does feel like it's a good matchup. That's possible. But it's either way, it hasn't paid out for him, and he's now 2-0 down, and now just has his Priest left that he's going to have to reverse sweep with.
Right. And this is something that you're going to have to get used to this weekend at least. We don't play tons of Last Hero Standing in tournaments. You know, we dip it in now and again. But for this, you will see series spiral out of control if the counter picker does not win that game, then it starts to slip pretty heavily. So you will start to see some sweeps because now, and you point out pretty good, there's Priest versus Rogue, winnable with Priest. Don't get me wrong, Jarla can take a win here, but it's Highlander Priest and Viper has like the Turbo Bomb Warrior, which again makes the Priest like so much worse because it's Highlander. So this series is going to be very tough for Jarla to take a win with.
It is. He does have all of the tech that he needs, though. He's playing Cobalt Sticky Finger and he's playing Acidic Swampus in his Highlander deck. Generally, you do have room to do that when you are playing a Highlander list. So he does have the Apotheosis, he does have the Zephyrus, he does have a little bit of extra natural healing in the deck with like Penance that some people are cutting from the 2-ofs list a lot of the time here. But honestly, those weapon destruction cards are going to be key, not just keeping Jarla in the series here and pushing it to 2-1, but in the matchups that are left to come, because Viper Zoo is banned here, so he still has his Bomb Warrior available, where those weapon destruction cards are going to be just as important, if not even more so.
Yeah, but either way you look at it, it's going to be an uphill climb here for Jarla, but a doable one. He pulls Secret Passage from the Thought Steal, which is going to be pretty nice for the class that doesn't normally draw too many cards, being able to just swap hands for a little bit and just filter through that deck just a little bit faster than normal. Viper, though, does have access to double Secret Passage himself. It has this Vulpera as well. And the Self-Sharpening Sword. Does Viper take the approach where he just starts going early, maybe even coin weapon at this point?
Yeah, I love it. I was just about to say, like, if I see my expected play this turn from Viper of Coin Sword, Jarla, if he wants it, just has 5 shots at Acidic Swampus off the Secret Passage this turn in response to it. Is that the line?
A part of me wants to say, does he want to see Viper commit more to this weapon right now? Because next turn, it's only a 2 attack, right? If he sees a poison or even just the Toxblade being played to an extent, but if you're waiting for things to get better, do you not just want to remove them anyway? So I think I would land on this for Jarla. Gives him his chance at getting the ooze. And the big reason for this is there's no Horde Pillager in Rogue, right? No one's playing Horde Pillager. So it means that once this weapon is gone, there is literally one left that he has to deal with, and that's it. So I do like the go there from Jarla. Doesn't hit it. And those are also not the best choice in the world either.
They are not, no. Shadow Word Ruin playable, Psyche Split also playable in specific scenarios. But very, very much on the outer reaches of what Jarla would have wanted to pick up there.
I do like
Viper now happily nodding to himself as he knows that he's dodged the ooze at this point, which is an enormous deal for his prospects in this game moving forward.
Yep. Do you like the End Reaver there, though, from Jarla? Because if there is a big Steel Dancer coming out in the near future, he has a minion that at least has a decent chance at killing off the additional threat, right? And especially as it's a little bit cheaper because of the studies. But Toxblade, and is that swing? 4 damage into a 1-2 subtle. Oh,
so
I felt that.
Viper appears to have committed to dealing with Apotheosis preemptively for as long as he possibly can in this matchup. It's the scariest thing about playing against Priest as an aggro deck. You want to ignore their minions, you want to do the classic aggro thing of just making them have the answers. The problem is their answer with Apotheosis is just way too strong a lot of the time if you leave all their minions up.
And then here's my question, because this is something I definitely struggle with, is I see that as not damage gone to face, which makes the game last longer, which makes them have their chances of getting an Apotheosis setup at some point better, right, on a basic level.
Yep.
As Viper, or as just, the aggro player, when do you decide enough is enough, it's all going to the face? Because I don't think you can trade with every minion that's played from Jarla, right?
I agree. And actually in that position, I think I would have gone face, because if the Apotheosis does come down there, it's not backbreaking in terms of overall healing, and you're able to deal with the Apotheosis minion on the following turn. It takes 1 nasty value trade across your board, yes, absolutely. So you can argue that Viper just wants to get repetitive minion damage through, and this is just kind of classic aggro philosophy, right? Of face goes minions, minions go face, right? That you just use the weapon as removal over and over again, so you can just keep connecting with your existing minions. But I think in that position, I think the punish was worth risking in that spot because it was relatively innocuous.
Well, we'll see how it pays off or not for Viper going forward. Jarla did have what I would call an unfun turn, but did get rid of the Vulpera, which reduces some damage coming down. Edwin, a snap follow-up here for Viper. And The Chrono Breaker for Jarla is technically active, but with double secret passage, Viper can just go fishing for a sap, or or whatever. I guess next turn to try and nullify a potential Chrono Breaker. So, see Viper respect the minion yet again. And to be fair to him, Sol, Jarla's on 18 and doesn't have many options.
Yep. If you can protect these minions and the minions keep connecting, all of that damage you're sinking into those minions on the other side is well worth it. Like, we can see with perfect information that the minions on the other side of the board don't really offer any threat anyway, so Viper could have just been slamming damage to face, but if he's able to trade and still finds enough damage to get through in the end, that kind of illustrates his point of view, right? Where not only did he win the game where Jarla didn't have any of the punishes for leaving minions up, he would and did win the game where Jarla had those options available.
Dr. Krastinov is a punctual fellow, isn't he? In 2 of these games now, he showed up just in time to give that dagger an extra durability and allow Viper a substantial amount of increased damage. And yet again, Sol, we are stood on the precipice of this match.
And there is the Apo off the top. No minions in play for Jarla to even find himself a solution out of this one.
I wonder.
Yeah, no minions in play and no time as well, because even this Dread Corsair is just a bit too expensive to combo with the Apotheosis.
Yeah, Cabal Acolyte, same deal.
And then we
ends up playing the bigger taunt.
Double secret. Obviously, the 2 secret passage don't make a difference, but secret passage for Viper to say, let me just filter through my deck for a second and find the card that's going to beat you up this turn.
Is this ever not lethal? There we go. Okay. I was getting slightly concerned. The Viper finds it, and there it is. 3-0 with the Weapon Rogue for Viper. Quick as you like it, and Jarla suddenly in danger of repeating the story of last week, which again, I am by no means winding back on the spiel at the start of the day. We're saying, Jarla's consistency is what should allow you to regard him as one of the best players in the world. If you make top 8 through the Swiss 5 out of 5 times, potentially 6 out of 6 times now going into next week, then you have to be regarded as one of the best players in the world. If you are able to back that up with the highest overall win rate in the round robin season, in the toughest region, which Europe is, you have to be regarded as one of the best players in the world. But the reality is, a lot of unlockers don't necessarily judge the game that well. And if you keep ending up as a nearly man and you're not putting in, the spectacular performances that maybe a Blaze is doing, they're not going to put you in the same conversation because that's not how they view the game. People remember winners. And, Jarla is in danger of yet again, just as soon as the cameras are on him, starting to fall away a little bit. But I'm being unnecessarily harsh because there really wasn't a great deal Jarla could have done that series. It was 3 swords into 3 huge swords into 3 dead Jarlas. That's about what happened.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see how Jarla continues to play throughout the day. He did look a little bit unhappy at certain moments in that series, and I think it was probably just a mixture of outcomes where, I'm upset my opponent is hitting me for 1 million damage, but also I think there were a few moments where there could have been just play unhappiness, I guess, and just saying, I wasn't really too happy with the way I approached that turn or the match in general. So we'll see how that plays out. But it was, I think, pretty good, Sol, to just give all the viewers at home just a display of how vicious Last Hero Standing can be. Because if you just slip once, you can get swept. And we've seen it way back when Zoo would as its prime, when Shaman, original like aggro and even mid-range Shaman was in its prime. Like, we played Last Hero Standing in most tournaments, and it was savagery. Like, you just see sweeps left, right, and center. And I think we're in it may be a similar meta, and not because of what archetypes are available, but in just how quick games can be dealt with in some of these aggressive decks, or just some of the powerful control options these players have. So we'll see how it plays out, but we are going to have KC versus RDU as our match number 2. And as expected, Warrior Bands here, Sol. But what do you make of the rest of the lineup?